Alrighty, so we're going to talk about lesson 5 and the 10 things that I've learned in 500 podcasts. And this one is like some 301 level stuff, and it's going to be, I'll try to do the best I can to explain it, but this is something that just takes years to figure out. And it's still going to take you years to figure out, but I think knowing that is going to quicken the process a little bit. So lesson 5 is balancing patience and aggression. So many times and throughout all these podcasts, you'll probably hear people say, be more patient. You have to be more patient. You have to be more patient. You hear other people say, you have to be more aggressive. Be more aggressive. Be more aggressive. And this is like, it's the ultimate dilemma, right? It's a balancing, and it becomes an art, not a science. And you can overthink things. You can be too patient. You can be too aggressive. But I want to break down the best I can, understanding the principles of when and why, so that you can work on these and develop them as a skill, so to speak. So obviously we know that being patient is really important. Knowing when to move and why is important. Being aggressive is also important. But there's a huge difference, and it boils down to doing things with purpose versus doing things carelessly. And that's kind of the whole principle of the entire thing, is do things with purpose, know when and why. And you have to understand that, like, when you move carelessly or you move aggressive but carelessly, you're taking risks that are unnecessary. And so being patient is key. In a recent podcast I did with Andrew Yakovic, he was saying, I think he was quoting either Randy Ulmer or Chuck Adams, either one of the greats, and saying that when they go into a stock, they wish they understood 20 years ago that there are times when it takes an hour to move 10 yards, and there are times when you have to sprint. You have to sprint as fast as you possibly can. And that not everything is kind of linear. And sometimes you have to move quickly and you have to move slow, and understanding the difference between those two. And so that's important. So recently I did a podcast with Andrew Yakovic, and he was talking and he was quoting, I think it was either Randy Ulmer or Chuck Adams, either way, one of the greats. And they were saying that they wish they knew 20 years ago or had understood this concept that sometimes it's going to take you an hour to go 10 yards, and sometimes it's going to require you to sprint as fast as you can. And understanding the difference is where you get to the art, not the science. So I think just knowing that is so important, because you have to understand that there are times you need to slow down to a snail's pace, and there's times you need to sprint. And that's kind of what I want to try to not beat into your guys' head, but like give you this concept you need to understand as you're in the woods and you think about these things. It's like, I need to slow down in this particular scenario, or I need to sprint, I need to get there. And this may not make sense to a lot of people, but just understand this concept. So we're going to boil down into a few points that are going to talk and maybe help you understand the difference between being aggressive, being patient, or moving slow or moving fast. The first one is just basic: move with purpose. Do everything like you're going to a specific point. Know where you're going to go, move with purpose. Whether that's fast or slow, you need to say, hey, I'm going here. There's no wandering or whatnot. It's a matter of when you get into stock mode, you saying, I'm going from this tree to that tree. What are the dangers in this danger zone? So where can I get picked off? So if I have a stock and I'm like, okay, my next objective is this tree, I look at that and say, how could I get picked off between this place and that place, point A and point B? So breaking that stock down into like micro stocks. And so, hey, I just need to get to this point. If I go this route, I'm getting to there. So moving with purpose. Okay, here I need to move very slow because there's a high likelihood that something could see me that I can't see them. So just understanding, breaking that into micro stocks. Second one, this actually came up in Andrew's podcast, and I think I'm guilty of this, and I picked this up and it's so true, is stop crouching. We tend to watch the movies or whatever, and we see people in these stocks and they're crouching. And when you really think about it, that just puts you into a predator mode. And so anything that notices you halfway is going to notice this crouching. The other thing is that we talk about animals see movement, not necessarily a particular, silhouette of a person. They may see a silhouette, but if they see movement, that's going to key them off, right? And so when you're crouched, you're actually moving much more than if you stay perfectly straight up and down and you're just moving slowly, right? And so think about this in the timber, and Andrew brought this up, and I was like, man, I've never heard this before, but it makes so much sense to me, is that everything in a timber patch is up and down. When you start crouching and bobbing, then you're moving more. And if you just if you walk very slowly with intent and you're straight up and down, you're actually going to move less. Now, there's times where you should crouch, right? Like If you're in the open plains, you're trying to stay low, you're trying to stay close to the ground, those make sense. But think about, should I be crouching or should I not be crouching? Maybe getting low isn't the key that you need to be doing. Maybe just moving very, very slowly so that movement is not noticed is more important than anything actually seeing your body outline. Next thing is that terrain may dictate speed. Now, this is one of those things where it's like, do I go fast? Do I go slow? Terrain dictates speed means that how far away can something see me? Is the brush very, very thick and nothing can see me when it's more than 10 yards away, I'm probably allowed to move a little bit more than if I'm in the wide open, right? Or say my visibility distance is 150 yards. That means I need to be moving pretty slow because there's a lot of things I can't see. If my visibility is only about 20 yards, I can see most every threat, or every threat that may pick me off, like a cow or whatever, or a buck, even in a deer scenario. So like understanding how fast you move has a lot to do with how far you can see and how far away something can see you. So just keeping those in mind. Kind of on that same thread, next point is to be constantly thinking about what is going to go wrong. So as you're making your stalk or you're moving, and this could be spot and stalk scenarios, it could just be as you move in on a herd. A lot of things is as you're moving in kind of the danger zone, let's call it the danger zone, you need to be constantly thinking like, okay, what could go wrong? So instead of, we talked about breaking your stalk into multiple miniature stalks, so point A to point B, checkpoints, thinking about, okay, what could be going wrong? Like, where could something see me from? And constantly analyzing the situation as it progresses and saying, okay, where could this go wrong? Where could someone see me? Where could someone pick off a noise or whatever? Am I crossing the open? And that kind of gets within the same point is like, make sure you take, I always say take the long route. Sometimes it's a long route, sometimes it's not, but take the long route. Instead of trying to get there quickly across an open area, I'll take the long route, which means I'm going to stay in concealment, which is going to hide a lot more movement, right? And so as you think about these micro movements, checkpoints, if you will, thinking about staying in the timber, take the long route. You know, as much as you've already stalked for an hour and you don't want to go all the way around something, sometimes it's better to go around and take the long route because you're going to have less chance of getting picked off. Even if it's a small percentage. Say like, I may go this way, and it's going to be quicker, but there's 50% chance I'm going to get picked off. If I go this long way, it's going to take me 30 more minutes, but there's only a 10% chance that I get seen on that route. I'm going to take that route every time because generally speaking, time isn't going to be my issue. It's going to be, you know, if the wind holds maybe, but it's going to be more of like, am I going to get seen, spotted, smelled, those things. Another big tip that I've kind of picked up is playing the stalk so that I'll have a second option. When it comes to spot and stalk, a lot of times we get so close and we put so much effort into this, we just try to force that last little bit. And one of the things that I've learned from the greats is to play that stalk as if you need to get another option. You need a second chance at this because inevitably what happens, you put a lot of effort into a stalk, you get almost there, and then you try to force the last 5% or 1%, and that blows the herd up, right? I'd much rather play the cautious role, be in the background, not get seen, not get smelled, and maybe I didn't get an opportunity, but I may get an opportunity tonight or tomorrow. Now, this can vary. I mean, obviously time is going to dictate other pressure, other hunters, and those things. But I think by and large, instead of trying to force it, instead of trying to be aggressive, there's times to be aggressive, but in this situation, it's like if I play this to where I will get another option, I know that like I'm not going to blow those animals out of there. By and large, I think the greats understand that they're going to get another option. If they play it cool, they let time on their hands, and they say, okay, I'm going to let this scenario play out. I'm going to let this scenario play out instead of trying to force it. They may force the 1%, but not the 10%, right? So if it's like, okay, I just have to step around this tree and I'll have a shot, that's when you can be aggressive. But if it's like, man, I got to go over this hill and the wind's not perfect and all these things are I got to get around all these cows and there's really no shot, they're not going to play that. They're going to wait for the right opportunity. So that's that balancing point of aggression versus patience and knowing when to use one versus the other. All right, the last bullet point is going to be, this one takes some practice, but it's understanding body language. And this is going to play into whether you're going to be patient or aggressive, right? So if I'm watching a herd dynamic, whether that's a bachelor groups of bucks or it's an entire herd of elk, like understanding body language, looking at that body language, seeing if they're on edge. And this is where a lot of times previous history can play into it. If I've watched a group of bucks for a long time, I kind of know their body language. If I've watched a herd of elk for a while, I'll understand their body language. And so that's why it's really important to kind of get as much data or as much time with those animals as you can, because it's going to tell you a lot. You can kind of start to tell if those cows are getting on edge, lead cow's getting on edge and she's barking or something. You know, those are times where you're like, okay, I know I have a limited amount of time. And just understanding that body language, reading body language, is going to help you make a decision on whether to be aggressive or whether to be more patient, whether even to back out in some scenarios. All right, so to kind of wrap it all up into a big pretty bow, if you will, understanding the difference between patience and aggression is definitely an art. It's a skill that you have to practice and work at. But I think moving with purpose, moving with intent are key pieces. Taking the long way, consistently be thinking about what is going to go wrong or what could go wrong, and playing the stock for a round 2. That's a huge one. And lastly, watching the body language. Watch the body language to understand whether to be aggressive or whether to be patient, whether to back out or whether to push harder. There's a lot of times where that can tell you everything. All right, I hope this helps you guys kind of wrap your head around it. I know this one is tough because it's a very 301 skill that takes time to develop, but keep these things in mind as you practice this year and focus on getting better at knowing when to be aggressive and when to be patient. You'll see people that lean towards aggressive, you'll see people that lean towards aggression or patience, and maybe it's like just a personality thing. So find what works for you, but watch out for those differences and just kind of be cognizant of them as you're making stocks.